This is a Jerusalem cross, and I present it here for you as an Easter person, as a person who now lives into the world where Jesus' resurrection is the proclamation of the day, and a Jerusalem cross is an ancient symbol. It goes back to the very beginning of the Christian church. It had 5 crosses, one large one, 4 little ones surrounded it. The symbolism here is the 5 wounds of Jesus, his side, his hands, and his feet. In about 2000, in about the year 1999, 2000, I was the member of a Lutheran church where a Jerusalem cross pendant for a necklace was gifted to everybody in the choirs, all the assisting ministers, all the lectors, all the people who participated over the Easter season in helping make worship happen. It was a thank you from the pastor of that congregation. And I received one and wore it as a necklace for a few years, one of this Jerusalem cross. Recently, in 2021, and this is the first time I learned of it, was around 2021, this symbol is being talked about as a symbol that could signify white supremacy and or Christian nationalism. I am not completely clear on whether it is a symbol for this or not. My sense is that this symbol is got a vague background. This symbol was used by the Crusaders in the Middle Ages to say that they were called by God to win Jerusalem back. That's how it got its name. I would say that there is definitely some problematic theology with that use of this cross. And recently we've seen that Pete Hegseth has it tattooed on his chest and shoulder area. And in about 2021, in a story that involves Pete Hegseth, they started to identify this as a white supremacy symbol instead of as a symbol that celebrates the 5 wounds of Christ for you and me. The question here is that hearsay or is this truth? What is truth? What is hearsay? Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Living the Lectionary, aka Preparing for Sunday. This is for April 12th, 2026. It is Easter 2, the second Sunday of the celebration of Easter. This is Easter 2a as far as the lectionary goes. The text for every year for the lectionary of the second week of Easter is always John 20, 19 through 31. All right, so a few things here, lots of things here. Of course, always too many things. First of all, I'm calling this Living the Lectionary. That is a slight deviation in hope for what I hope to do in this video. It looks exactly like Preparing for Sunday. It really is just another Preparing for Sunday, but I'm calling it Living the Lectionary for the spring and summer, for the time ahead. It's kind of one of those generic marketing rebrands. All I mean by Living the Lectionary is that what I hope to do for all spring and summer is pull out a few things from each text for each week. That's the lectionary text, to take those things and to ask how it affects the world that we currently live in. And so the handful of things for this week from the text, from John 20, first of all, I'm going to take the idea of hearsay. Hearsay is not admissible in a court of law, and I'm wrestling with if this is present in the text, John 20, 19 through 31. Every year on the week after Easter, we get this thing about doubting Thomas, the upper room, and Jesus saying, "My peace I leave with you." It's the same reading no matter what year. We get it every year. It's one of those readings that we've heard so many times. We've heard the resurrection of Jesus. We've heard this second week of Easter. Next week we get the Emmaus. We always in the season of Easter get this same delivery of the same texts. This year it dawned on me that Thomas is troubled by hearsay. Here's what I mean by that in the text, and here's how I think we live the lectionary. Thomas is being told by his pals, the other disciples, that the women that they know told a story. That's hearsay. The story that the women tell but are not in the upper room to tell for themselves is not admissible in a court of law in the United States in 2026. It's hearsay. Thomas, what he requests to experience the woundedness of Jesus for himself is asking for Jesus' truth in a world, or a time, I'll say, in a time of, for him, of hearsay. And what I mean by that is, and how that fits, I think, is Pete Hegseth, to me, is a person who was called to the military, has military experience that I do not, and understands things that I do not understand. Being called to a military career is not something I know. I can hear stories about. My grandpa, my dad were in the military. I know some tangent things, but I don't understand it for myself. I do think that using the cross, which the Jerusalem cross is a thing I understand and can speak to, as a reason to bomb people is not okay. Pete may or may not be qualified for the job he has. I do not think maybe he should be the Secretary of War or Secretary of Defense. I think maybe he should have been sort of trained into that job for a period before he has it. That's just my opinion. But in 2021, because Pete has this tattoo, the Jerusalem cross, on his chest and shoulder, it began to be said that this was a white Christian nationalist, white supremacist symbol. So there's too much hearsay in this. To the best of my knowledge, and I'm open to being adjusted on this, it was not, I did not know that this was a white Christian nationalist symbol until we said, oh, Pete has it, so it has to be one. What I would prefer is clear examples of what Pete may have said that makes him racist or nationalist. And let's talk about that. I would prefer not to, as a matter of fact, I think the Jerusalem cross is now being used as a white supremacist symbol regularly because of the 2021 association, not because that it really is one. So what people who hear this text and want to live into the lectionary together, they want to move from hearsay to real presence of Jesus. The real presence, the real truth of the story is a few things in this text. Jesus breaks into the room where the fearful disciples are locked up. Thomas was not originally present there. He has no room for hearsay. He wants to experience the real presence of Jesus, and he gets it, right? So Jesus does all the work here. The disciples are encountered in the midst of their fear, and it's the real presence of Jesus. And then it's the wounds that Thomas gets to touch. So there's the connection to the Jerusalem cross, that he really gets to touch those wounds, that it's the real presence of Jesus. When Jesus is present in this text, it is clearly being connected to the words, "My peace I give to you." Jesus here, where his wounds are being invoked, would say that where my wounds are being thought of in a symbol, the connection is I took on and was inflicted injury by weapon, and you, if you are a follower, bring peace. So, if you want to identify our calling as people, as Christians, with bringing peace, this would be a text you might live into the lectionary with and try to set. To be clear, in John chapter 3, it is written, and you know this text, "For God so loved the world," the world means everybody and everything in it. Jesus is universal. It's for white supremacists. It's for people of any color. It's for Islamic people, Jewish people, Christian people, atheist people. Jesus loves all of them. And what he's going to say here is that the way that the gospel is best delivered is by the peace I leave to you, by my real presence. That does not mean that I am a universalist. Not everybody will follow this. And I also am not naive. there has to be a Secretary of Defense, because not all people are good. Not all people do good. The leadership in Iran has been noteworthy for its abuse of people. I think both Democrats and Republicans have wanted some kind of leadership change in Iran for a long time. The problem is, are we doing that as Americans or as Christians? And to me, that is an American calling, and I'm an American, so I participate in that. I don't believe it's a Christian calling, and now I'm separating out nationalism from Christianity. It's possible to be called to something that's proper as an American that isn't proper or isn't right for Christians, and vice versa. And sometimes they align, sometimes they don't. But the problem of hearsay is that we're debating the symbol instead of the action and the reality. To me, Pete is a faithful person. He believes in the Jesus who died on the cross. That does not mean that I have proper theology or he does. People of faith don't just look at Pete and say, boy, I hate that guy or I love that guy, without saying, what's the plank in my own eye when I'm talking about the speck in his? And so to know that a thing is peace-bringing, it tells you that a person is humble about their own shortcomings when they're trying to talk about someone else's perceived shortcomings. These are things that you get from this text if it is indeed about hearsay, and help you live into it. I think this is a calling to be people about more than hearsay. We participate in hearsay when we do things like when it happens on Instagram, but we see it especially like on Facebook. It happens on X, but it happens particularly on Facebook. When we take a post by a person and share that post, and I do that often. I share ELCA posts. That's hearsay. I am not sharing my personal experience. I am beginning to believe on terms of social media that it's better to share personal experiences. So if someone writes an article about what Pete Hegseth does that is good and why you like him, or what he does and that is bad and why you don't like him, though that article should be read by you and I as Americans, we should read that, because this is our Department of War, Department of Defense, and we participate, we vote, we tax and give money to this and pray. We should read that article. When we post, hey, here's what I think I'd like to see happen today, we should not post hearsay. We should say, I've experienced Jesus. When Jesus came to me, Jesus was about peace, not war. And so I don't believe that we should be bombing and evoking Jesus' name. Now you're talking about a thing that is no longer hearsay, that is your own opinion. We've got to get away from hearsay and get down to the core of the matter. Easter person, Pentecost person, we got to be called to something more. On Easter morning, I saw all sorts of posts about bombing people, bombing Iranians. Remember, Jesus died for people of every nationality and every background. Easter is a day of peace. It's probably not a day that's supposed to be taken over by talking about whether a person should be bombing or not. And so what we are mindful of is, I am not going to post the people that I'm upset with, the hearsay. I'm simply going to tell you that I believe that the Easter proclamation is that Jesus breaks into the places of our locked up fear and moves past hearsay into real experience of touching wounds. The wounds are for me, and it's connected to being filled with and offering peace. Therefore, I do not think the story of Easter should be bombing. I don't think the story of who God is should be bombing. However, I do believe that there are times where people who are involved in the military are called and need to evoke bombing. And maybe Easter's armistice is not possible. I don't know. Because we're now involved in violence in Iran. Maybe it had to happen that day because of some military expediency. I do not believe, though, that proclamation should have been lifted up above the proclamation of Easter. Now, guys, I'm not providing hearsay. I'm trying to provide my opinion of what I think should happen on Easter. I think on Easter, the story should be about peace more than it should be about bombs. And so I think I'm getting that from this text, and I think the call to dig through hearsay and not make it about the people is more important than arguing over what the tattoo is about and whether Pete is white supremacist or not. I think what we argue about is, and what we put our bodies in the place of, is that white supremacy as a Christian is not okay because Jesus came for me and for people of every color. Now, do we live in a world where there are deviations of people based on their race? Yes. And so now we need to say, how do we, as people of faith who are also Americans, talk about that problem? Well, we do not permit supremacy, but I don't know that, a bomb was dropped on Iran on Easter because someone has a tattoo. Remove yourself from all the drama and all the hearsay and gets down to what the real presence is. The real presence is, how do I bring peace? You don't bring it by invoking hearsay on people, right? Peace is that someone was called to bomb, and that probably had a traumatic effect on the person called, the person doing the calling. I want peace for them. Ultimately, this text in John 20:19 through 31 has a part in it that I'll conclude by talking about. It says, "Blessed are those who do not see, but believe." And that's a John paraphrase, but still believe, but believe. The word believe there means trust. And where it says, "Blessed are those," it's evoking lack. Think of, although John would not necessarily know this text, think of the Beatitudes where the blessed is for people who cry, people who hunger, people who thirst, people who are in need. Peace is for where we feel broken. Brokenness is a part of life. This blessedness, blessed are those who don't see, who live in the world of hearsay. They don't have easy, straightforward answers, but trust that God and peace are the answer and not things that are not of God. Now, to be clear, I am not a police officer. When your home is being broken into, you should not call me. I would get there and be a trauma victim just as badly as you when someone is nefariously breaking into your house. No, you should call the police. When the police come, they do not say, well, hey, does he have on a white supremacist symbol? Am I a white supremacist and this is a person of color? No, they don't do any of that. They properly do their job when they protect the home. That's not my job. It enters into asking them to do things. That could happen on Easter. And now they have to, pull a weapon. But let's not be naive that the difficulty of life is that both of these things exist. The church and the civic or police or government thing are separate because the jobs are separate. The church always considers what it means to have symbols and use them properly. The church always sits in patience and peace with people till they are exposed to the peace of the real presence of Jesus and not just hearsay. Police don't have time for that. When the guns are being drawn in the house and people are at risk, they need to make decisions. After that, a lot of thing goes into whether it was done properly or not. People who resist ongoing pursuit of peace still have a long way to go and a lot to learn, and that is not of God. We get every Easter, on the second week of Easter, this same text from John, and then we get the same text and learn new things from it because we're trying to live into the lectionary, because it's never perfected. We always need Jesus to break into our lives and bring healing, correction, discussion, peace, forgiveness of sins. The church is the agency for forgiving sins, calling for peace, involving peace. The government can sometimes do this. It can sometimes not do this. Police sometimes have to do things that I am not called to. The church is called to caring for all of the above, offering, proclaiming, pointing to the universal Christ. God so loved the world that whoever believes in him, whoever has trust in Jesus instead of in themselves, is saved. And not everybody's going to have that. God judges who is the believer and who isn't. There is no room for white supremacy. I am not sure if a Jerusalem cross is a white supremacist symbol or not, and I don't want to be involved in the hearsay. I want to be involved in caring for people, regardless of what color they are, and not bombing people and making that a priority on a day it doesn't need to be. Are we bombing people on Easter to make a point? That would be completely wrong and would be inappropriate. Are we bombing people on Easter because that was the only day it was possible to do that? Well, how unfortunate and sad is that? And boy, do we need God's peace to help us if that's true, right? This is a deviated way of looking at the text. I'm trying to ask how we live. I'm trying to make it maybe less all about the text, a little bit more about events that we live into. No text should ever point at other people, because then those three fingers are always pointing back at us. Every text should speak law and gospel to me, and law and gospel to Pete Hegseth, to anybody above him, below him, anybody bombing or anybody preaching. The condemnation of law and gospel, no one's above it. We should all be a part of listening to it. That is what guides us into making good decisions at the spur of the moment, whether we're policemen, directors of the Department of Defense, or lowly pastors. Our priorities, though, have gotten real mixed up. And so to me, what I see this as is looking and calling for real presence of Jesus, touching woundedness and the real meaning of symbols in a world of hearsay and sinfulness and brokenness. So how do we do that better? We must experience Jesus ourselves. Where do we experience Jesus? I've experienced him when and the Bible tells us this, when we have helped the person in need, Jesus is there. When you have helped them, you have helped me, Jesus says. We should be guided into this. We should do it, and others should be called into it. We've got, though, to be called into the actual action and away from more debate about the hearsay. When we elevate the discussion, or devolve the discussion, I should say, to a discussion about hearsay, all we get from people is more argument. When we make it about the gospel, real presence, real care, real interest in being bettered and seeing other people be bettered, then the world sees God's kingdom come. All right, so I tried to make this a living lectionary, like a little bit more current event-y than I do sometimes. The sermon on Sunday will cover hearsay, the real presence of Jesus, those that should be blessed because they don't see, but trust Jesus even when it's so hard and confusing. So there's the themes for the sermon. There's the 3 moves for the sermon. There's the 3 moves directly taken from this text, but it also helps us live the lectionary in the world that we live in. All right? So for the spring and summer, I'm going to call this Living the Lectionary, also known as Preparing for Sunday. And I hope it gives you some harbor in the tumultuous sea of news and crazy information that we live in. I hope that we be more than people of hearsay and used or misused symbols, but that we know and always talk about real experiences of what we believe and where God is present. Hey, this may or may not be a symbol that's being misappropriated, but I really hope you meet the God who was wounded that started the symbol. All right? So thanks for joining me. This is, of course, Preparing for Sunday. It feels just like it. It looks just like it. I'm giving it a crazy, new, stupid name for the moment. Living the Lectionary. But really, it doesn't matter what I call it. I hope that you are called by the Holy Spirit to join us for worship, to partake in the meal, the real presence of Jesus with us Sunday. I hope that you stay safe in a crazy world filled with hearsay. And I hope that you are given a harbor in this tumultuous sea of those things. And I hope that you stay safe. I look forward to seeing you soon, where God gives us God's real presence in a world that we need it, where God forms me and you to be an Easter, Pentecost, humble yet powerful people. All right? Stay safe. I will see you soon.